Just note that. Confirmation of previous minutes. I'm happy to move the previous minutes. Do I have a seconder? Just someone to second the minutes. Jake McClellan. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. And then public forum. Nothing today. Deputations by appointment. There are none today. And presentation of petitions. There are none today. So that then sees us moving to item 7, the performance exceptions report. So I'd welcome Peter Ryan to the table. Peter, good morning, thank you. If there are any remarks that you'd like to make on this report, we'll take it as read and then we'll move to questions.
Thank you and good morning. No, there are no real detailed remarks to make. The levels of service and to some extent the capital projects results are extremely consistent with the last 5 months. They're probably a fair indication of where we will land at year end, and there isn't really much else to report. The level of service results in particular have been stable for the last 5 months in a row. They're not varying less than 1%. So they're a very stable position. Much of what remains will depend on the resident survey results, and we've undertaken to give you a rough and early look at those results rather than waiting till late in the year and presenting a polished result in May when it's a little bit too late to do anything. But the remaining results will often hinge on those surveys. The other more objective results to some extent were affected by process issues around COVID. So there is that factor there as well. But by and large we're fairly consistent with previous years, within a few % of the organisational target and very stable.
Excellent, thank you very much. So just a couple of questions on the resident survey results, if I can. So good to hear that once you've got those results and had an opportunity to have a look at them, we'll be getting an early heads up on what they look like. When will this report be updated with those results?
I would hope next month's report would contain those preliminary results. We would normally only have the package of results to you in early May.
Yep.
But the raw data, so putting aside pretty graphs and presentation, the raw data should be available for next month's report.
Excellent. All
now
right,
we just opened reporting yesterday, so I do need to talk to some people about exactly what percentage of that data will be available over the next week. But I believe that most of it will be, and we should be able to give it directly to the managers. Now there is the issue, I should canvass here, that if it appears in next month's report, that data will be public at that point.
Just
so we can't report it without it becoming public.
Of course, yeah, of course.
And Chair, you will appreciate I haven't seen any of it yet myself.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's keep a good joined up approach to this.
Yes.
And expect there'll be at the very least some update next month, possibly the report updated, certainly the report updated in May, the following month. Yeah, let's just keep a good joined up approach to that. I mean, the important thing is that once the information is available and has been considered, the reports are updated with it. And the other important thing from our point of view, of course, is that that's something we'd be taking into account as part of our long-term plan considerations alongside the community feedback that we're getting through the consultation period at the moment as well.
Of course.
All right, so thank you for that update. Let's move on to any further questions on this report. Are there any questions? Jimmy.
Question. On page 32, regarding to parks and the foreshore, the target 100% customer service request numbers actual 66%. But your answer here, due to the closure of several out-of-date historical customer service request numbers, I can understand what I mean.
I can't really speak for Andrew in detail here, but I think what he's saying is that there have been historically some CSRs that were held up.
Yes.
And that in resolving them and coming to a final statistic, that it's come out at 66%.
Okay, but I think probably this one, if you close, should be the percentage should be high rather than low. So
well, not if you've exceeded the time frame.
Okay. Second question is on page 35. Regarding citizen and customer service delivery in timely manner, target is 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes, but year to date is more than 2 minutes. But here, particularly mention staffing constraint have been our biggest hurdle in recent weeks. That's short of staff, am I right? Short of task force, or
I think it can be taken at face value that they have been short of staff and that they do have people about to commence to address that.
so but it's more than 2 minutes. That's a particular. It's average only, average.
Yes, an average speed to answer, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Page 22, and actually I'll probably potentially ask this one in the next one. The exceptions around the major cycleway, should I just save that for the next item?
Potentially, yes, because this is the... Okay, that's fine.
Anything else on this report? Yanni?
Thanks. Just on the measure, more people are choosing to travel by bus.
Which page, Jan?
That's on page 30.
Thank you.
I was just interested if we've got any information about the success or otherwise of the real-time information system. I have put questions into the CE to try and understand the extent of the failure of that system for buses. And I think we were going to get something back, and I know we're looking at a new system. We had a youth advisory meeting a few weeks ago where we've got a youth action plan from 2017, which one of the actions is to fix the real-time information on the buses. So I guess it's just a question around the remedial action, because we're not getting more people choosing to go by bus, we're not meeting our target, and I just wondered whether we're making any steps to improve people's understanding of how the system works, given it's been an issue that's been raised. I'm just not comfortable with the lack of detail in the remedial action when some very obvious things seem to be at play that could be done.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are putting in a new RTI, or real-time information system, and I haven't got an exact date for when that will be delivered, but obviously we need to work closely with Environment Canterbury on that, because as I think I mentioned last time, they have to go at specific bus stops, they have to be on the buses, and they have to also be at the bus interchange. So all three components need to speak to each other. So we're in the middle of kind of rolling that out now, and I expect it certainly will be in this year, but I can't give an exact date on when that'll be done.
Because the thing that people keep saying to me is, if the real-time information system is incorrect and inaccurate, it's a real deterrent. It would be better to turn it off and not have incorrect information being given for people so that they just wait for the bus. But is there any sort of understanding about the extent of the problem with the current real-time information system, and what steps are being taken to ensure that when people want to catch a bus, they can either find out by calling when it's coming, or they don't get the inaccurate information? Because it just, I've had several people raise this concern with me, and I just am not clear why our response would be to continue to use a system that's not working, if that's indeed the case.
So it's not that the system is not working completely, but it certainly is past its use-by date, hence the reason why we're replacing it. But it is still preferable from our perspective to keep it going, because it does have benefits and it is important. But we admit it's not perfect, and hence the reason why it's been replaced.
So to add to that, if we're in a replacement mode, when that is completed, it is clearly important that there is very good communication to the public to tell them that there is something new in place and that they can rely on the information that is there. Otherwise, they will have a view that they can't necessarily trust it.
I get that, but the feedback that I'm currently getting from people that are trying to catch the bus is they keep getting the wrong information. They keep getting told the bus is coming 20 minutes later when it actually comes in a minute or 2 minutes time. So we've improved the frequency along Ferry Road, and yet the real-time information is still giving people very, very wrong information. But I don't know the extent of the problem, but what people are saying to me is they'd rather not be given incorrect information than then not just kind of expect the bus to come, than be told it's coming 20 minutes later to have it whiz past while they go do something else.
In terms of the existing real-time information system, like I said, there is issues with it. It's not perfect, hence the reason why we are replacing it. But it's, in our view, the benefits of keeping it in place until we put the new system in outweigh the costs of having some of it not working as we'd like. Because
that we can, like picking up on the Chief Executive's point, is there any communications that we can give to the community to help them understand that it's not working on areas where it's broken? Because I don't have any sense of the scale of the problem or where exactly it's not working versus where it is.
The intention is to, once we roll out the new system, is to have we have a communications plan around that, and people will be made aware of it once it's implemented. But it's not as simple as simply saying some parts of it don't work as well as others. So it's I don't know whether that's possible to put something out there to say some parts of the system don't work. I would suggest that that's likely to result in miscommunication and misunderstanding of the system, and would probably cause more damage than it solves.
Can we find out what the actual problem is with it, though?
The actual problem is that the system has become redundant and needs replaced, and hence the reason why we're replacing it. I can't really say too much more than that. That's the reason why we're replacing it. It's not perfect. We've reported that it hasn't been perfect for a long period of time. We've sent numerous memos to councillors on it. So it's not news, and that's the reason why we're replacing it. And we've got funding in the LTP to do that. So
you're anticipating it will be completed in this financial year?
Maybe not this financial year, through you, Mr. Chair, but not too far after that, is my understanding. But I can't give you an exact date at the moment. But my understanding is it will be Q3.
Can we get an update on that? I mean, clearly there's some urgency around it. I mean, Yanni's point about incorrect information being provided, I guess there's a question as to whether incorrect information is better than no information at all or not. The important thing is if we know there's a problem, there's funds on budget, or there will be funds on budget through the LTP to do it, that we prioritise this and get it done as soon as possible.
And
so if we can get a memo around those timelines.
And just to give some feedback, it seems like with the new scheduling, when the frequency was increased, that's what's created the problem. So, you know, we've got buses going, I think it's every 10 minutes up the main roads now.
Okay. I mean, we've been told that we've got a system that isn't working and it needs to be replaced. What we need to know is when that replacement is going to happen. Okay, further questions? Pauline.
One. Water supply?
Yep, sure. What page?
On page 25, just with the leakage rate, it doesn't seem to be coming down at all. And we have, as far as I know, been putting in some remediation, for instance, prioritising the leakages and getting out there much quicker and getting on top of we've been told, getting on top of that leakage. So why isn't that figure changing? Or is this sort of slightly older data?
I think this is one for John.
Yeah, John, hi.
It's not likely to change greatly for about 5 years, because we have a 5-year rolling program of doing leak detection throughout the city. So it's a difficult one, and we're not going to see an instantaneous response to our leakage rate with an instantaneous replacement of a pipe, because we don't measure pipe by pipe, we measure it zone by zone.
So is it more a matter of data recording, or is it actual... Are you saying the leakage is being slowed, but the data's showing us it's not?
We're saying that the renewal program will significantly improve the leakage rate.
Yes.
But the methodology we use to measure it doesn't reflect that instantaneously.
Oh, that's a bit concerning, isn't it? Because it's still sitting...
This is something that will hopefully be improved when we complete our smart water trial in the Rafiti area. So we'll have bulk water meters and instantaneous measurements of flows, and that will give us a very good understanding of what leakage rates are in these areas once we've had that smart area, and we then roll it out throughout the rest of the city, depending on what the results of that are.
Right. So when are you expecting that to be finished, that zone, or the smart?
Oh, very good question.
Yeah.
It's part of our water reform package, so it's probably about a year away, and we're letting our tenders for the supply of that, the instrumentations with that very soon.
So what you're saying is once you get the Rafiti trial done, you could transfer that expectation into another zone if you've done the same amount of
We
renewals.
could do if the council chooses to fund that through the LTP.
Right, okay. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Are there any further questions that people want to raise on this? All right, so I'm happy to move that we receive the information provided in the report. Pauline, you will second. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. So now let's move to item 8, the Capital Project Performance Report. And Ruth, thank you for joining us. Again, we'll take the report as read. Are there any particular parts of this report you want to draw our attention to, or any comments that you'd like to make?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So this is the report to the end of February 2021. I'll speak to the current financial year first. So page 43, our current financial year forecasts against our core program budget of 375.5. Our project managers are still forecasting a spend of 380.3. So we're still in a bring back position against the core program. Against the full financial year budget of 552.5, we're forecasting a spend of 490. So performance to date and our future month forecasts for this financial year, you'll see that January and February spend was lower than forecast by around about 14 million. So this does require our delivery units to recover that spend in future months, as well as deliver on the forecasts that they've got within those months. If you refer to the summary page on page 41, delivery units have confirmed that they will be able to recover that spend. So 8.5 million of that was for transport, was in transport, and that is work that has been completed but is not yet billed. So it will enter the system in future months. And 3.8 million of that was actually a negative spend. It was just a transfer of a land purchase into Three Waters, and Three Waters will be spending that, forecasting to spend that this financial year. So based on the discussions that we had at last committee, you'll now see the detail relating to future month forecasts by delivery unit on pages 46 to 48. So this is in a different format than you've seen before. So on the left of those pages, you'll see the current month forecast, and then the forecast per delivery unit that makes up that full month forecast. And within that, there is detail around what makes up that delivery unit forecast.
That's good.
So I'll make some general comments on deliverability this financial year, but then I'll be asking our delivery units to come up and speak to what specifically they are doing within those months to deliver on those forecasts. So in terms of general comments, as per last month, our core program is still forecasting a bring back, which is a unique position, which means that against our core program, we're still able to accommodate some unforeseen issues in the final months of the year. Across council, we remain in an improved position for projects in construction. And so construction is where we do see the majority of spend, so we would want to see a lot of projects in construction. So we have 300 this year, which is forecasting a remaining spend of 147 million. And that compares to last year where we had 230, so 70 less, forecasting a remaining spend of 118 million. So that means we've got $29 million worth of projects that are in construction that we didn't have this time last year. And so last year, our performance against that forecast in March of 118 was 80%, despite COVID lockdown of 6 weeks. So we'd expect to see a better result than we did last year. In terms of delivery units, Transport's in an improved position. So they've got 57 projects in construction forecasting 50 million versus 36 last year forecasting 35. And Three Waters were in a similar position with 97 projects in construction forecasting 40 million. I'll let them talk a little bit more about their units shortly. Forecast accuracy, given the less spend in January and February than forecast, is at 80%, which is still a reasonably good forecast accuracy. But if we were to model that out this financial year, we'd end up with a result of around 321 million spend against the core program, which is around a 14% carry forward. So that's just on forecast accuracy alone though. So I'll invite the delivery units to come up and talk specifically around their plan to deliver to the end of financial year, starting with Three Waters. So John, are you able to come up? Three Waters has seen a spend to date of 74. They've got a remaining spend of 90 million. They've got some big land purchases coming up, but I'll let John speak to that. If you want to refer to pages 46 and 48, you'll be able to see the detail that these delivery units will be speaking to.
I don't have a great deal to add than I did from our last finance and performance meeting, where I gave confidence that we were going to meet our delivery targets. Just to add that confidence does reduce in time as the closer we get to the end of the financial year, and some of the issues that we're experiencing are unexpected consent conditions on some of our larger projects in the land drainage area, which we're endeavouring to resolve, and some delays in getting procurement completed through post-tender clarifications and closing out tags. Apart from that, we are still in negotiations with one large land purchase of about $6 million, which needs to be finalised. Everything else is pretty much as I stated last meeting.
All right, thank you.
Transport.
Let's take the presentation from all of the areas, from all of the units, and then if there are questions, we can bring staff back to the table to answer those at the time.
I haven't got very much voice.
So maybe Richard needs to do it then.
I'm here for the comedy value. Similar to Three Waters, we haven't changed a lot since last month. However, we have Transport has a lot of projects in contract, a large number of MCRs. Dyers Pass Road is underway, and Marston's Road Bridge are the big ones. Sorry. And that is largely what is giving us the confidence on the spend. We also have a number that have closed tenders, that have short construction periods and are about to start, including Cashmere, Hoonay, Wesley's.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
Can you repeat it?
It's about to Cashmere's about to start.
Cashmere, Worsley's, Hoonhay, we thought your ears might have pricked up at that point. That's all good. All right, thank you.
And then finally, it's the major facilities, so CMUA and Metro. I see Alistair's not in the room, but I can speak to Metro. As you know, it's a third-party delivered project. The forecasts that we have in our system are those that we receive from them, so we don't have any control over those forecasts. And then I understand you're getting a CMUA update later, so...
All right.
Cool. I'll just make some few more final comments just around the watch list. You'll note that 2 of our transport projects are now in handover and closure, so they're Hereford Street and Victoria Street. Great successful projects there. And St Albans Community Centre also practical completion this month with the opening next month, early April. And then you'll see that you've got a new report this month, so instead of providing delivery completes from the previous period, you'll now see what we've been able to achieve for the whole financial year. So there's a considerable effort to get all of those projects delivered to date this financial year. So we'll keep that updated, kind of rolling forward for the financial year. So happy to take any questions now. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So a first look at the table on, or the graph on page 45. You know, we're not delivering to forecast in January and February, and we've got some very ambitious forecasts that obviously we're hearing that we are expecting to deliver to. over the next 4 months. What we've just heard from delivery units, is really reinforcing that high level of confidence, and that's good for us to hear. And can I also say that the format of the report, where we are now breaking this down by delivery unit, makes it far easier to understand and to have confidence in the information that's been presented. So thank you for that. But at a high level, really, and I think we've got this right, you are confirming a high level of confidence around delivery of what are really some quite ambitious targets over the next 4 months.
Yeah, I think if you look at how we were doing last year, our spend to date, if we had delivered on January and February, would be about the same. And as you know, we moved our annual plan of value down, budget down, to reflect our previous year delivery. And our delivery units are saying that we can recover January and February because it was work completed, not billed. And so if we are able to do that, we are on track to deliver.
Excellent. And then on Metro Sports, obviously this is the snapshot of where we were at in February when this report was put together. No further update on that. The information that we've got here is the most current.
Alistair's here.
I believe, sorry, I'm rushing. John Bridgman's due to address council shortly, so the invite's been sent and he's received, and he's coming in to talk to Metro Sports specifically regarding the questions that have been raised here.
Yeah. All right.
You're right?
Yes.
Thank you.
There was a big article in the newspaper about it being delayed.
Yeah.
Can we just clarify whether that's existing information that we're aware of or whether that's new information?
No, the delay has always been noted. It's been, and the COVID environment's created that delay, so it's the extent of that delay has not been publicly notified, and that's why John's coming in to speak to you.
All right, so we'll wait for John to come in and we'll have that conversation at that time.
I can't remember the exact date, I apologise, but I'm pretty sure it's the 29th, I think, of one.
If we can make sure that that's
I'll
in people's
confirm it.
calendars so that we get good attendance at that meeting, that would be great.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, so that's everything from me. Are there any other questions on this report? Jimmy?
Also on page 44, but if this Metro Sports facility delay due to the kind of COVID-19 shutdown, but I just concerned whether the contractor request the cost from the council or not. Request because due to the shutdown, there's a further delay.
The negotiations around the COVID variations for Metro Sport are undertaken by our third party, so we don't have visibility of that.
Okay, thank you. Second one is on page 66, the major cycle route, South Express, the section 2. The completion date, I'm not sure, because we start from the section 3, section 2, section 1. So whether the completion date by December 22 should be amended by December 21, because now it's almost go to the tender process, am I right, in mid? 66 page. Section 2. Because section 3 is September 21.
As I understand it, through you, Mr Chair, that's consistent with what we've reported previously, so nothing's changed.
Still the same.
Still the same.
Okay, but why you need to take so long time for the, you go to the tender, you need to take another 1.5 years, just complete. But it is the section 1, you have not yet go to tender, just detailed design, but you can complete by the April 22. What's the rationale?
That's the planning date. If we can deliver it earlier, we will.
Quite unreasonable. I just confused, unreasonable.
So that's no change, Jimmy, as has been noted from previous information that we've had on this?
Yeah, but that's because you section 1, you have not yet the tender, just detailed design, you can complete by the April 22. But the section 2 now, you almost will be go to the tender. Why you still need to take on December 22?
Through you, Mr Chair, it's consistent with what we've reported previously, and it's simply the planning date. So, look, as we get closer to that, that might change, and we'll update you accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions on the report? Yanni?
Page 63, my favourite, the Littleton Harbour wastewater scheme. It's now turned to amber. You say ground conditions and contractual issues to be resolved, design changes requiring significant input from council staff, slowing down construction fronts. I mean, the poor residents of Alport Place, they've literally had a decade of repairs and works in their little street for 10 years, and this project is still showing a risk. Can anyone tell me what the actual risks are and what the timeframe is for resolving them? And if there's anything, I'll just keep repeating, if there's any sort of enhancement that we can do as a temporary or transitional measure to try and give those residents something to feel good about, rather than just having work site on their street for 10 years.
Through the chair, we don't have the right people in the room for that right now, so I'm happy to...
Can we find out?
Yeah, provide out some information.
Yeah, doesn't John? Or is
Oh,
that other
yeah.
people?
As I understand it, the only risk on that project is related to budget, and that is being resolved through a change request, and that is yet to be determined whether it is, there is a risk to budget. We're just flagging it at this stage. So everything else I understand is on target, and what you have highlighted in terms of some ground conditions is probably just reflective of why that's a risk to budget.
Is there any scope within the project to actually tidy up the end of the street that's basically being used as a work site?
You're talking about Allport Place?
Allport Place.
I'll take that up with the project manager and see what we can do with it.
Yeah, just some nice plantings or something just to kind of return it to some sort of state rather than just isn't,
Certainly.
feel.
We'll have a look at that.
Yeah, okay, that would be really cool.
Cheers.
The other thing, the question I had was in regards to, is the Ferry Road Master Plan on track? Because I know there's two different projects going on there, but it does seem very slow. We had a community drop-in session that was scheduled, and I don't think staff thought that the works would be outside of where the drop-in session was, but it was still there, so it's showing here that it's all on track, but I just wanted to get confirmation. And I know that there's a wastewater and a roading project.
It is all on track as to the dates and the watch list. My understanding is there's been an update to the board recently. So has the board had a memo recently? I'll follow that up because it's due to go out to the board. But it will be done by the June date. Yes.
So the work's progressing as expected?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
And just finally, just interested in the Waitaki project, the ORC, where it says it's been delayed because of contamination issues. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the page. Can't find it, but it's the one that's got, it's said that it's been delayed because of significant contamination issues, and I'm just wondering why we didn't know about that when we approved it, because I'm sure that there were people in this room that had some sense of the site not being ideal, or maybe, yeah, just struck me as unusual.
I understand that is a matter of just following standard project management procedure. Before we start on a project, we have to have approval to proceed, and then after that we get into our investigations and our detailed site investigations, and it's probably not until that time that we find that there's contamination and have to take account of it.
Do we know what sort of contamination's there?
I don't specifically, but I'm guessing there's probably a bit of asbestos there. I doubt that there's hydrocarbons or anything like that, so it'll involve taking it to Cape Valley and possibly some additional expense and consenting.
Okay.
All right, thank you. In the absence, Mike.
Thank you. Just got a question on the Northern Line cycleway.
Have you got a page number for that one?
65.
Thank you.
Thanks. I noticed since the last watch list that the line for the 5 rail crossings has been removed, which had a expected delivery date of June 22nd. And now there's obviously a number also that have sections that have been pushed out to December 22 from a range of dates from June and October 22. I'd just like to get some information on when we're expecting to see those rail crossings actually delivered, and has there been a delay in them?
There hasn't been a delay. We're still working through them with KiwiRail and finalising the dates. So
Okay.
this is improving the information that we knew on last month.
So
The crossings have all been incorporated within the sections. We did agree
from the
to keep them
information you know now,
Yep.
when would you expect to see the crossings completed?
The crossings will be later than we initially thought because of the requirements to get gates and things. We are looking to put temporary measures on to make it better.
Okay. So December 22nd then?
This is the best.
And there's nothing we can do to...
We are working positively with KiwiRail at the moment.
Yeah.
So we're getting some of them done. Sturrocks, Barnes and others are being pushed forward. We are struggling with Hewood and Langdons, but we are working on them.
Yeah.
Councillor Davidson, you will recall we actually raised this specifically with the Minister, and then hence we did see an improvement in the situation as
it
reported.
is still moving forward positively.
Yes, but I have a new report that has the date pushed out,
Yes.
and I don't see that moving forward positively. I see that delay as a delay.
So
we have as you're aware, there's 2 intersections that actually are an accident waiting to happen, and I'm extremely concerned about the length of time that this project is taken to be completed when we have money, government money, to do it.
And I repeat, we saw an improvement in that situation. However, I have said to Lynette, any other problems that will you please come and tell us so that we can raise it again to keep putting the pressure back on if we're not seeing a shift.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so we've got a recommendation in front of us to receive the information in the reports. I'm happy to move that. Jimmy, you'll second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you. All right, so now we'll move to item 9, the Council Controlled Organisations Draft Statements of Intent. And Linda and Len, welcome to the table. So these are Civic Building, LGFA, Rickett and Bush Trust and Rod Donald Banks Peninsula Trust. Any commentary on these, just by way of kicking this one off?
Do you want to do the draft SOIs first?
So we've got the,
Item 9.
sorry, item 9, yes, the draft SOIs, yes, please. Yep, so we'll do the draft SOIs first, and then item 10 is the half-yearly reports for the same organisations.
So these are the draft SOIs for Civic Building, Local Government Funding Agency, Rickett and Bush Trust, Rod Donald Banks Peninsula Trust. Our general view is that there could be some improvements made in the drafting of these strategic objectives, nature and scope of operations and performance measures, but they are, we can talk to each of the trusts, the 2 trusts and Civic Building about those prior to the finalisation. As an aside, the draft SOIs for CCHL, CNZ and VBase will come to Finance and Performance on the 29th of April after workshops. Transwaste SOI has been received and will go to the Joint Committee in April. No draft SOIs have been received for Central Plains Water Trust or the Samua project. Central Plains Water Trust has been given an extension and we have no knowledge of where the Samua draft SOI is. The draft SOIs, to the extent
there are still COVID implications that weren't expected last year. The draft SOIs have updated for that. The key COVID impact is a general view that borders won't open until 2022, and that will affect Rickett and Bush Trust in terms of tours and the cafe. LGFA, potentially more pressure on borrowing from local councils, and that is about the sum of it. I'm happy to take questions.
All right, thank you. So just noting that resolution 2 that really picks up the feedback that you'll be giving around the specifics and the clear strategic objectives. And I think it's good that we've got that there. That obviously gives you the ability to go back and do that in each case, which is good. Mm-hmm. So moving to questions, Yanni.
Thanks. In the Rickett and Bush draft statement of intent, I note that the goal 4 is to increase visitation, but when you go through to the performance targets, I may have missed it, but I don't see any target around.
No, so the target's been removed for this period while the borders are closed. Their ability to increase visitation is severely impacted by that.
Right.
So I've noted in the report that we will make sure that as soon as they get back to kind of business as usual, that performance target will come back in again.
I guess from my point of view, like, I don't know how others feel, but I think it is quite good to get visibility of it. Like, obviously recognising that we're in a different environment, but it would still be good to track the trends around the statement of intent. Like, they'll be tracking it anyway. But also, like, domestic visitation should be something that possibly should be being targeted, and maybe it is, maybe it's not, but I would have thought what we've seen around New Zealand is there has been an increase in some sort of visitation for some tourist operators.
Cool.
Part of our feedback, we can go back to our Rickett and Bush. And we'll talk to them about whether they record that domestic talent, and we'll see what they can do. I mean,
it usually flows through when I talk about the variances, and so usually I will comment on whether donations or
it's in the annual report as well, so it's not
a problem.
I don't think it's a big ask, but I just think it may be that I don't know. We try and change the marketing.
The real question will be whether we can get something that's reasonable. We don't want to put a target in that's unachievable, but we'll work with them on that.
And are you able just to advise what the equity consists of? Is it just the valuation of the property?
Yes. Yeah. Purely the valuation.
Mostly, and a truck and the ranger's house.
Land, the bush.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? Mike?
Just looking at the SOI for civic building, and in its performance target, it has environmental and social performance targets, but it doesn't actually have a social performance target. It just has an environmental one. And I would have thought that actually, having an accessible building would be quite a good social target. And I'm just wondering if they need to have a look at actually putting a social target in there if they say they're going to have social targets.
We're going to have a look at that. We'll go back to the directors of the company and have a talk about that.
Thank you. Nothing else? Yanni?
Building, whether we need to think about what our statement of intent is, or if we need to send them a letter of expectation. I don't know if others had any concern about it, but...
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
Question for staff. Do you think there's anything we should be asking CBL to do differently in the upcoming year?
No.
No.
No, we don't. No.
So we're happy with their performance?
Yeah, it's very narrow scope of works that they do. It would be... It's fairly straightforward in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, was there something that you were wanting to raise, Yanni?
Well, I mean, Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, you know, it just does seem like they're making good money off the building.
But in terms of the statement of intent, there's nothing that you're proposing as a change?
No, I don't quite understand the timing of these processes, but yeah, if people don't feel there's anything needed to be added, fine, maybe through a letter of expectation.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. All right, thank you. Jimmy?
Yeah, I declare the conflict interest for the Rixton
Yeah,
Bush
no, we
Trust.
noted at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, because
We
in
noted at the
mention,
beginning of the meeting, there are a
I
number
tried
of
to-
councillors who've got roles on these trusts and boards.
Okay.
And obviously you're one of those as
Thank
regards
you.
Riccarton Bush. That's fine.
Thank you.
It's noted. All right, so we have got the recommendations in front of us. Do I have a mover for those? Mike? And a seconder? Tim? Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. So now we'll move to the half-yearly reports for the same organisations.
I was planning to take these as read. There's very little to say, but I could run through quickly and just mention LGFA has the COVID implications have come through as an increase in borrowing by councils. So bearing in mind this is for the period 1 July to 31 December last year. Riccarton Bush Trust has had some benefit of, has reduced its third-party income from the cafe and tours, primarily as a result of the closed borders. It's also affected domestically when the levels shift, the restrictions on travel internally are put on. Rod Donald Banks Peninsula Trust has actually had an increase in domestic use of the Rod Donald hut, and its key variances relate to a land purchase that it's got underway, and it's been raising income for that, raising donations for that, and that's all I've got.
All right, thank you. So Tim's happy to move. Sarah, you're happy to second? Were there any questions on this? All right, so these have been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. And then item 11, Civic Financial Services, the statement of intent. So just noting the two resolutions that are in front of us, particularly Resolution 2 about some next steps there. Linda, was there any comment that you wanted to make on this?
Yes, I just wanted to not so much talk about what's in the SOI, but to mention that Civic Financial Services used to be an insurance company to local authorities, and it had its own statute which provided a governance framework. As a result, it was exempted from the CCO provisions of the LGA, but in the meantime, it's transitioned its business away from insurance and into funds management or administering funds, KiwiSaver funds for local authority employees. The Insurance Act that it was subject to has been repealed, and it's now got no governing legislation other than your general business legislation like Companies Act. As a result, we don't get a draft SOI, we get a final SOI, so we don't get that opportunity to provide comments, although it wouldn't stop us if we had them, but as it's final, they would, if they didn't want to do it, they wouldn't change their SOI. Since I wrote this report, we've had a letter from them saying, which they send every year, saying that their annual general meeting will be in June, I think it is, and all councils have got until 18th of April to put any nominations up for board positions. You might recall last year we put 2 nominations up because we were concerned that a number of members of the board had served very lengthy terms. The board members this year that are up for, who are retiring by rotation and have put themselves up for re-election the chair, Tony Marriott, who's served 13 years, and Director John Melville, who's served 8 years. A very long-serving director who'd been on there for 16 years, retired this year, and the board has co-opted a new member. And the problem there is that Auckland and Christchurch councils have between them 32%, and the remainder of their shareholding is split between 73 small councils or other councils, which makes it very difficult to, and for them with such small holdings to be particularly incentivised to vote against the status quo. Last year we put up our 2 candidates. They weren't successful, partly because Auckland Council had, at a staff level, agreed with our position that the board members had served sufficient time and the board needed to be refreshed. But when it came to voting, they didn't follow through. Potentially putting up 2 nominations at the one time to a long-standing board was...
I think this is something we perhaps need to take offline, you know, and something that we would then bring back by way as a proper report to the meeting if there was a decision for the committee to make. I'm interested, rather than in the detail of what happened last year and discussing individuals, I'm particularly interested in the timeline. So we've got the AGM, which happens in June.
It's all been June,
Yeah.
Yep.
And we've always we've always had resolutions for the AGM brought to this meeting prior, so that we've got a proxy that we appoint. So there'll be a report coming with all of that. Any considerations around directors is something that we could put into that report as well. Would the timelines work, though?
No. At that point, it'll be too late. We've got a window between now and the 18th of April to make any nominations, and after that we can only vote on what they have on their agenda.
All right, but you're not suggesting that we should make any changes to this resolution in front of us today because we don't have information on that?
That's correct.
Yeah, so I think this is something we need to take offline, and if there's something that needs to be brought back to somewhere for a decision prior to the 18th of April, let's work out how we build that in.
Okay.
All right, but let's take that offline and bring it back in a proper paper with written information of whatever decisions we need to make at that time, rather than just the verbal update that you're providing us now. All right, thank you.
Chair.
Was there anything else, Linda, that you wanted to comment on this statement of intent? All right, thank you very much indeed. Sam?
And I don't know how other people would feel, but I wonder if we could just delegate to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor the ability to make the nominations on our behalf.
Delegate to who, sorry?
The Mayor and the Deputy Mayor.
Yeah.
Rather than bringing, if you guys are happy with that, it might just speed it up.
Yeah, I think that's sensible. It avoids it having to come back for a decision, and clear. It's a we need to have a proper discussion about it rather than.
It just means we can move. And then the only other thing is we were going to put a timeline in there. I think we discussed earlier on point 2. I think Diane had some wording.
That's right. So we were just going to add there within the next 6 months. So if we can just build that into resolution 2, it just sets some expectation around the timing for that.
Six months.
6 months, yeah. All right, and then resolution 3, Linda, this is just about the director nominations.
Yep.
You'll still be bringing the report that we normally get around appointing a proxy and deciding on any resolutions?
Most definitely,
Yeah.
yes.
Second question.
So moved by Sam, seconded by James Daniels.
So I just had some questions.
Yeah, no, I'll come back to questions. I just want to get these resolutions sorted first, and then I'll come back to any outstanding questions. Delegate to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor director nominations for the annual general meeting. delegate to the Deputy Mayor and Deputy Mayor decisions on director nominations for the upcoming annual general meeting. Yep, that's fine. Linda, that works, doesn't it? That's good. Yep, all right. Fantastic. So moved by Sam MacDonald and seconded by James Daniels. And we're not done with questions yet, so Yanni, I'll come back to you.
Thanks. Can you just advise what sort of, like, just from reading this, we're not getting dividends from them anymore. So what's our shareholding worth value terms?
The only dividend of any note that we have received in the past was when they sold their building, and we got a special dividend for that.
Yeah.
They've never been in a position to pay, I mean, there might have been small dividends. Our shareholding, we can't divest because there's nobody to buy it.
So what would happen if we just pull out?
It was still bound by the LAP work that they've undertaken through historical insurance work. So there's still an ongoing trail of activity in that space. But as Linda pointed out, the key focus for them now is superannuation and the administration of the super easy schemes. And they've chosen, as effective from last year, that they see more benefit in retaining or reducing their profitability to support those reduced fees for all of those members.
Right.
So that's how they see their role as being a superannuation provider.
How many of our members or staff are actually members of that scheme? Like, do we know what the benefit is actually to us for them reducing the fees? Like, is there any advantage?
Only insofar that perhaps it will generate more demand for their scheme, because they'll effectively be...
Yeah. The number we don't have of our staff being a participant. A lot of the smaller councils, it's very attractive for those members. So therefore, and Auckland does have a very high proportion of membership to that scheme. So our one, we're not too sure.
Our one is high. I did look for that information. I just can't remember what the answer is. I did look at that last year because I was concerned about risk if we were recommending it. But
we could include that in the paper that's coming out for the AGM.
Sure.
If that will help.
Well, I think so. Like, I mean,
statements of intent. I mean, I'm getting positive commentary from Diane around, the supply of that service to this council. And I think we need to remember that we're just one shareholder along with a number of other councils in an organisation which is providing a service to a number of councils. So for us to take a particularly Christchurch-centric approach on this in the bigger picture may not be the best way forward. But why don't we think about how we can deal with the matters that Yanni's raising in terms of the preparation for the AGM, the paper that's coming, because that's obviously where any resolutions for the AGM would be detailed, rather than for the statement of intent, and obviously the consideration around the delegation in item 3 would take into account what we expect the organisation to be doing in the next period as well.
Yeah, and I mean, just reading these projections, like, it's a tiny scheme, $2.4 million. I mean, they get $2.5 million of revenue and it's $2.1 million of expenses. Like, in the scheme of things, it seems tiny. It wouldn't take, that many people to get those sorts of figures in across the country. So
I mean, again, I'm not hearing you suggesting any change to the statement of intent. There are obviously some matters of interest that may be better considered in terms of any resolutions for the AGM rather than in regard to the statement of intent. All right. Keen to move this on. Any further questions? All right, so this is moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. All right, so now moving to the last item on our open agenda, the Christchurch City Holdings half-year report. And Paul, thank you for joining us. I invite you to come to the table and to make any comments on this report before we ask you some questions.
Yeah, no, thank you, very much, Andrew, and Steve Ballard, who I think most of you know, is here as well. If you ask any really difficult questions, I'll get Steve to answer those.
Thank you.
But look, I'll take the report as read. But I think just in summary, 6 months ago, well, 9 months ago, when we were forecasting at the back end of COVID, May, June last year, pretty uncertain environment, pretty difficult to actually forecast what that post-COVID period was going to look like. Pleasingly, 6 months down the track, it's been a lot stronger financially than what we thought, particularly in relation to the most impacted part of our portfolio, which was the airport. So that domestic air travel market has been a lot more resilient than what we did estimate actually back in June last year. So that's the largest driver of the favourable returns relative to what we were expecting in that first half. There's still a significant element of uncertainty there, though. It's, you know, economically, the economy as a whole has performed a lot more, a lot stronger than what probably many commentators projected at the time, but there's still that lingering uncertainty there in terms of border closures, or border reopening rather. The timeframes around that are still uncertain, and when borders reopen, will they stay open, and what's the impact and the flow through? So there's those sort of issues in a travel context. We've got similar challenges in a supply chain context, which is impacting more broadly. Some of it's linked to COVID, and some of it's linked to some of the disruptions in Auckland, around being the major freight gateway for sea freight. So net, I think from Council's point of view and CCHL's point of view, the headline story is that in June last year, CCHL forecast a dividend to Council of 18 million. We revised that up to 34 million in December last year as you were going through your LTP process. As we sit here today, we remain confident that we're on track to deliver that revised dividend forecast of 34 million, which would be a decision that the board will make in June and pay in June. So that's probably all I had to provide as an overview. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Paul? Aaron.
Yeah, just on some of the global freight stuff, Paul, I believe that air freight hasn't changed much in price and the delivery mechanisms have stayed about the same, so they're performing really well. Sea freight, on the other hand, has gone up 400% and is incredibly slow. Have you had feedback from the port company why that is? Because that'll be affecting our exporters, our construction, I mean just every industry possible.
Yeah, I haven't had feedback on the pricing, Aaron. I'm not aware of the 400% stat. In terms of timeframes, though, you're right. There are challenges around freight movements in and out of New Zealand. A lot of those are linked to Auckland, because Auckland has been disrupted because they've got an automation project, a widely publicised automation project in Auckland to automate a lot of activity on the port. That hasn't been without challenge. And that has caused significant disruption in Auckland, which has cascaded through the rest of the network, because a lot of what comes into Auckland is either coastal shipped or road or rail transferred throughout the rest of the country. And the coastal shipping network has been disrupted because of the disruptions in Auckland. So that has caused timing challenges for importers and exporters.
And was there any opportunity for like Littleton Port to grab some ground off Auckland through that?
Yep, not off Auckland necessarily, but I think is it public around Maersk?
I don't know if it's public or not, but they've certainly taken some opportunity, haven't they, to increase their profile.
Yeah, I mean, LPC are capturing some market share. We can talk a little bit more openly in PX around that, but the answer is yes, but not from Auckland, more from more adjacent ports.
Right, okay, yeah, because obviously Northland took that opportunity at one point. Had some wins and losses, but
yeah,
okay.
Auckland and Tauranga tend to compete. I mean, the way the port network works, New Zealand's a two-hub country, a South Island hub and a North Island hub. The North Island hub logically is either Tauranga or Auckland, and that's the shipping lines make those choices, as do the importers and exporters. LPC is logically, the main South Island hub, but there are other options, and the coastal shipping network is going to link to that hub. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I've got Jimmy, Phil, and then Yanni.
On page 225, last paragraph. just want to clarify the figure. I mean, compared to the last year, the first half, the net income, net profit reduced almost about the $20 million. However, the total operating revenue reduced for $42 million. There is a gap, the $20 million and also $42 million. I just want to know, except the tax, who else this gap? 42 and this 20.
So the revenue's down 42. Yeah, I haven't got the same page number references, Jimmy, I'm sorry, than you have. But the question was the revenue's down 42 million.
Yeah.
And the profit's down 20 million?
20 million.
That's your question?
Yeah, the question.
Yeah. And as your question,
except the tax, who else?
Well, the other difference would be operating costs.
Yeah. Operating costs.
Yeah, so I mean that's a consolidated figure though, so it's an addition of effectively the 8 subsidiary companies. So there's a number of moving parts.
Okay.
In there, there's probably 20 or 30 different things going on there to actually fully answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think you have been quite nice to Auckland, saying it was challenging. The word disaster would be a lot better. I'm just asking a question. LPC's not, as far as you know, aren't looking to have an automated system and run down that.
LPC, good question. LPC is watching with interest. At some point that is an option. It's on their radar. They're not about to press go on it. They're watching with interest and learning from what Auckland are experiencing. There's no immediate plans to follow suit.
Apart from the loss of money, and we have ships coming in and out, and stuff just clagged up in Auckland. It's hopeless, all because of that system.
Yeah, you've only got to go to Auckland and you can see there's 10 or 15 vessels sitting out there just moored for days.
I just don't want to see that happen down here.
No, and it's not happening down here. But despite it not happening down here, there are some challenges because we've had vessels in at LPC berthed that have got a slot to get into Auckland on their way out or on their way back. That means they can't spend the amount of time they've needed to spend here to actually unload everything. So there's been cargo that's come into port, has remained on the vessel, hasn't been able to be unloaded because they've got to go to get the slot in Sydney or get the slot in Auckland, and then they've had to come back. So you don't get it off. There's been vehicle movements that have actually been into port but haven't got off the boat until the second time around. Those are the sort of things that are happening all the time, unfortunately, which we can't control. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Yanni.
I'm struggling to understand why both Enable and Orion are such major sponsors of the Chamber of Commerce. Like, they're monopolies. I can't see what benefit it is for them to be involved in a sort of lobby organisation.
I think they see themselves as corporate citizens of Canterbury and supporting organisations like the two you mentioned, who are key stakeholders in our community, in our corporate community. They see supporting those and aligning themselves with those organisations as being consistent with their broader objectives in a commercial context.
Do you find it sort of like okay that they would support an organisation that wants us to sell off our assets? Oh, is that? No, I mean.
So, the first question is valid, and I think the answer is pretty obvious. The second is going well beyond what's a reasonable question for a 6-monthly report. The reason strategically why our companies would want to have a relationship with others in the business community, I think the answer is pretty obvious, but it's a valid question. The second question I don't think is a reasonable question for the 6-monthly report at all.
So, but they're part of the organisation that makes submissions to us during the LTP. Why wouldn't they be neutral?
All right.
So, okay. The other thing is, can I just get a sense of what's happening as part of our letter of expectation? We expected that we get a report at least 6 monthly on progress of achieving remuneration expectations across the group and in implementing the living wage. Can you give us... I was quite concerned, for example, that the Orion CEO salary remuneration wasn't disclosed. But can you give us some sense of what's been happening with our expectations across the remuneration and also the living wage? What the trends are, any You know, I think personally, any transparency we could get when CEOs are appointed would be welcome, but I mean, obviously, I'll leave that for you to respond.
So there's a workshop
Next week.
next Tuesday to cover all of that. So that's the appropriate forum to work through that.
Why can't, sorry, what are we workshopping?
Every aspect of the question you just asked.
But this is like a month, this is the 6 monthly report.
Yep.
So we can't get any sense now what's been happening.
Well, there's a package of information that we've got that addresses that, that's not before you today, and it's not in front of me today either.
Right.
That I think we can have a much more informed discussion if you can allow us to take you through a package of information that sets all of that out, which we're preparing for the workshop next Tuesday.
Will that be public?
No, the workshop won't be public.
Is there anything that we can say publicly about what's been happening?
Well, let's discuss that at the workshop on Tuesday. That's the purpose of the workshop.
And we've also got the statement of intent coming back, obviously. Given the discussion that happened around the letter of expectation, I imagine that some of the matters that you're talking about will come into play around the statement of intent discussion, which is why the workshop prior to that is important.
But the comments in the media, for example, when new CEOs are appointed and we refuse to release how much they're getting paid, just looks bad, right? And that's public. So I can't understand why we shouldn't be able at least to show what the general trends are in terms of our performance monitoring around.
So let's, as Paul has suggested,
I mean, the living wage has got huge public interest.
Yeah.
As does CEO remuneration.
So let's get the information, which is the important part. That's what we want, that's what we need, that's what we expect, that's what we've said that we expect. If Paul's electing to bring that to us by way of a workshop, and that's the best forum to present that information, then that works. But quite rightly, and you're raising it now, how and when the information that's presented at the workshop and to what extent that becomes public will be something that is absolutely on the table for discussion at the workshop, including the specific matters that you've raised. But let's have the workshop and see what's been presented, and then once we've got that information, we're in a far better position to discuss how we want to handle it. But I don't doubt, looking at the public discussion that happened around the letter of expectation, that some of the matters that you've raised will come into the discussion for the statement of intent as well. So getting the timing and sequencing of this right and getting the correct and full information will be vital in terms of the development of the SLI.
Yep. Thanks, Andrew.
Nothing further, Paul, you wanted to add on that?
No, look, I'm really looking forward to the workshop discussion. I think we've got a couple of hours set aside, and I think that's a much more appropriate way to actually work it through with the right information in front of everybody, so we're speaking the same language.
Yeah, I mean, what we're hearing today is that there's a degree of interest, a strong degree of interest in the matters that we're going to be discussing at that workshop. Let's have the workshop, and at that time we can work out where we go from there with that information. May well be the statement of intent discussion is where much of it lands.
And the workshop's sort of linked to that, Andrew. Exactly right.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's what we agreed we would do.
That was my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on to further questions. Aaron.
Yeah, sorry, I should have asked it before. So just around the airport, and in the red there is the Tasman and Pacific Islands passenger numbers and also international passenger volumes. They're all obviously in red, but the comment has no expectation of a Tasman bubble in FY21 and no expectation of a wider border opening. And is that updated now?
No, that was the view at 31 December. If we updated it a month ago, it might have been the same. If we updated it even a week ago, it might have been the same. If we updated it earlier this week, it might have changed. But we're going to find out on the 6th of April, I believe. It's a really difficult one to call.
Yeah,
and even if we have certainty around a time frame to open up a Trans-Tasman bubble, how that then plays out is inherently uncertain as well.
Yeah, so from speaking to some of the staff there, obviously they're ready to go, and they have plans if it happens. But
we've been ready to go since October last year.
Yeah, but from the government's perspective, have we heard whether all the bubbles are in and out of Auckland only, or are they talking will Christchurch and the South Island be in the conversation?
I'm led to believe it's definitely a national. So they're effectively thinking about New Zealand as another state of Australia, if you want to think about it that way. So it'll be a state-by-state bubble from New Zealand into different states of Australia. That won't be Auckland-centric. The intentions, if you look at the websites of the airlines who are taking forward bookings, they are taking bookings in and out of Christchurch and Auckland. So definitely Christchurch is well positioned.
Cool. Thank you. Any further questions? All right. So we've got a resolution in front of us to note the reports. Do I have a mover for that? Tim, seconded by Pauline. Discussion? Yep. Yanni.
So I was just a little bit concerned around some of the information in the report that two of our companies are major sponsors of the Chamber of Commerce, who submitted that CCHL be directed to provide council with advice on how to repackage its investments to maintain services for Christchurch while releasing capital for new investments. And I mean, I just find it a little bit ironic, really, that there's this kind of advocacy and lobbying, which I welcome from the Chamber, that they're entirely able to do that. But it does seem to me that there is a bit of a conflict of interest issue happening here, where you've got major funders who we own, then paying an organisation to come and criticise us. It seems a bit weird. So, I mean, you know, it's no criticism of the Chamber. I understand the role that they play in the city. But I just wonder how we're kind of measuring the value of what we're getting from our companies, and whether CCHL needs to have some sort of policy around that. So, you know, I welcome the information in the report. I do think we need to start thinking about the remuneration and living wage in a transparent way. And although I welcome the workshop, the reality is that there's huge public interest in terms of what's happening with living wage and senior executive remuneration. And I think we should be as open and transparent as possible when it comes to discussing that, so that the public can see what's going on. So happy to receive the report. I obviously, I think it's probably apparent that others don't share my concerns around that, but I would encourage you to read the submissions from the Chamber to past annual and LTPs, and to reflect on whether it's appropriate that our companies are funding criticism of ourselves, or whether there's a better use of that money coming back to the ratepayers.
Thank you. Tim.
Thank you, and I think it's actually a really good thing that our companies are involved with the Chamber of Commerce. They do a hell of a lot for the business in Christchurch. I don't think we've got to the stage yet where we blacklist people, organisations that have a different view than we do. And I think that if we got to that stage, none of us would be sitting here. We'd probably be in a jail somewhere. So I think it's excellent that we're involved in it. The training that the Chamber of Commerce do throughout all businesses of all sizes is absolutely exceptional, and is a backbone to the industry in Christchurch and Canterbury. So I'm really pleased that they are.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Sarah.
I'll just add that, you know, companies like City Care help sponsor Student Volunteer Army and those kind of projects. And yeah. Well, no, it was receiving. We were told that we were told in the informal that it was because it was just receiving. It was okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The advice that we'd given was that that's the case.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any further discussion on this report? No. All right. So this has been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. All right. So now if we can move to the resolution to exclude the public. And Paul, we are inviting you to remain after the public have been excluded for item 15. Because of knowledge that's relevant to that item, I'll assist the council. I'm happy to move the resolution to exclude the public. Do I have a seconder? Sam MacDonald. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. All right, so we'll just wait for a moment.